reassure that communication is at its utmost highest for the future.
Okay, great. So I guess there's a few things we're going to look at, and maybe one is what are you doing in terms of planning for the future? And maybe I might start with Stephen, because that might come from a very large organisation, and then you guys are going to have quite different approaches to that, I think. How do you plan how things could go for your workforce?
All right. I mean, look, there's no easy answer to any of these questions with the focus of what we're looking at here in the conference today. I think the only thing we can be assured of is rapid change. And a lot of the questions that were asked in some of the earlier sessions were how do we future-proof ourselves? How do we prepare for the future? At the end of the day, I think it comes down to some very simple concepts, and this is the stuff that we're trying to build into our technologies today. And that's the ability to make a more informed decision a lot more rapidly. All of these technologies, we talk cognitive, used to be artificial intelligence. At the end of the day, they're really just search engines. You've got some data, you crunch it, and you can interrogate it. It started with the Yahoo directory services. Google perfected the ability to query these data sets. And really Watson is nothing more than a really big search engine that lets you query it in probably more conversationalistic ways than we could do in the past. And it gives you some insights. But at the end of the day, if you ask it the wrong question, you're going to get the wrong answer. So the real hard part of trying to figure out where this fits into wherever we are in our particular space is what is the right question to ask? And this hasn't changed in the history of computing. If you know what the right question is, the problem becomes very easy. So with the benefit of hindsight, we could have known the internet was going to be a big thing. Before it existed, you wouldn't have known the question to ask. So I think that's the big thing is figuring out what is the right question to ask based on your particular domain. And IBM had this big marketing sort of campaign just a couple of months ago where they were saying what if, and then they'd do some blurb, what if, and that really is key. So what if, when I went to go apply for my mortgage, they could give me an answer in 5 seconds? You were saying you can't work remotely, you need some FaceTime with people. Well, what if those subliminal messages, etc., the sort of confidence levels you need to have those engagements and really, not be able to work remotely because of that? What if you could make a more informed decision because you've got some cognitive abilities that give you the right data at the right time? So those are the real key things that we're trying to explore.
Nice. Leanne, you were talking about that you're already able, if you find the right people in the role, that you'll hire them, but it's not a deal breaker that they're physically in the same place as you.
No, absolutely not. So I think it's very specific to, say, if it's developer or whatever. So I work in marketing. For me, I would like to have the team in-house just because we're very collaborative. But for the developers, we could have developers working out of San Francisco, or our guys will take off. They're based in Cork, but they're like, okay, I want to go to New Zealand for a month, and they work out of there, and that's completely fine. I think it works for them because they tend to work at various hours during the day. Some people have a very steady 9 to 5, but we'll see messages from the devs at 3 a.m. and that's kind of when they're in their zone. So it really doesn't matter if they're in Cork or they're not in Cork. So we're lucky in that we actually build the tools to kind of, I suppose, allow this. So even if it's a support person, they can be wherever in the world because we're all working off the one system. It doesn't matter to us.
And you mentioned the golden hour, so
yes.
Tell them about your...
So what we try to do, we could have people, I think at the moment we've people working in about 8 different countries, just one here and there. So we have if we have everyone online from say 11 to 3 Irish time, that means if you're working with somebody, a developer in San Francisco or whatever, they have to be on at 11 and you have that kind of 4-hour window to do what you need to do. So that tends to be the most productive time of the day for us. Everybody's online, everybody's like checking stuff off lists and stuff. So that's kind of how we manage it. But I think it is very specific to what you're working on. So.
Thanks. So Jared, how do you guys plan for the future? I mean, you're growing,
Yeah, I suppose in terms of our own team, we're quite spread out as well. We have the bulk in Dublin, but we would have developers, especially yourself there. We chased after one developer for about a year. She's incredible. We tried to convince her to come join us. Eventually she did. She said she'll come join us because she wants to work from Chamonix and go snowboarding every day. So we had no choice but open up an office, not an office there, a hot desk there for her. Very similar, we would have a period where everyone has to be online. In terms of developers, I mean, it's very specific to developers or designers. They do have certain times of the day. We use Slack internally, so we have like mobile channels on Slack, and I would see pushing code at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So if that suits them, that's fine. Other parts of the team, we do like to have them together. We do encourage at least everyone to work from home 1 day a week, and usually has to be a Wednesday or a Thursday, just so that they can kind of catch up and get some free space and catch up and like a lot of work and not have meetings.
So is that a strategy as an anti-open space? Like if you're telling to go home?
We have an open space office, obviously, like most companies today, but that can be very distracting
Yes.
too. Everyone's on top of each other and stuff isn't getting done.
Yeah.
Everyone gets pulled into everyone else's meetings. Sometimes you're like, it wouldn't be much better if we all had. You guys in Teamwork have offices, don't you?
Yeah, well, the developers have office and the open space then for, say, sales, marketing, support.
Yeah. Yeah, we found we often think like maybe we should go back to having offices, like because everyone kind of gets pulled into everyone else's business very quickly. So I think as Peter was telling me, the event offices. And we find people, it is nice for people to go and spend a day a week at home and just catch up with everything and come back fresh the next day.
So that's interesting. You codify it to the point where you actually tell people that they'll be more productive by not coming.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we say just like 1 day a week you have to not come into the office. That wouldn't be for sales. Sales would be different. They get the hard stuff. Sales have to be there every day, unfortunately.
Cool. So look, Lisa, I mean, in terms of a millennial aspect to this, how do you manage their expectations about this kind of challenge?
Great question. I mean, it's quite clear, even just from the prior 3 speakers, that there's initiatives and kind of thinking a little bit different with the generations that they have working with them. I don't know if I agree with everything that I've heard today, being a millennial
Maybe they
expert,
want you to.
I think it's case per case, individual per individual. I think there's a stereotype out there about millennials today. It's quite a negative one. We're on a mission for this year. We heard me on the radio yesterday how to try and change that perception. We've got a lot of ideas on the table of what way we think they want to be motivated and what way works for them. But in hindsight, we may not be getting it right per the organisation itself. So think about your future. What do you do? What is your industry? Who are you marketing to? Who is your target customers? Because you need to mirror who your customers are. And I think something that Leanne just mentioned prior is, think about, even though we're making moves from, this is my workforce of 100 people, this is how I want all of the 100 people to work, that might work for every 100 person in the room. So do treat them as individuals to get the best out of them. But again, there's quite a big mixture of intergenerational workforces out there. I'm going to throw some stats at you. 70% of millennials are saying that they're disengaged in their workforces today. That is a massive, massive number. With Ireland down to 6.4% unemployment, lowest since the Celtic Tiger days, we're finding job hopping is starting to come into play. So teams and companies need to think extremely differently of how to engage this generation, or again, all generations together.
Okay, thanks. So with what Lisa's saying, we get sent a lot of business books to review, and it's quite interesting the number of books that are focusing on motivation, purpose, and things that maybe 10, 15 years ago might have seemed like new age topics. 10, 15 years ago, you got a job, you got paid, you did what you wanted at the weekend. Whereas now it seems to be that a good manager and a good company is factoring in that the staff actually buy into it. So again, it's nice to come from your end, massive company. Do you have to look after the happiness of your team? And if you do, how do you do that?
If you don't, you're going to have attrition rates that are just going to break your business. I mean, it's really interesting when you talk about some of the approaches and how we've had to change that. I mean, IBM's it's well over 100 years old.
Yeah.
There's not many companies that are even a year old. But we've obviously had to change, and the tooling that we use is changed rapidly. We go from an in-house source control. We're all on GitHub now. It's unheard of for a company like IBM to be moving onto something like GitHub. Excuse the tech speak. One of the things that we have to change is how do we find new people, how do we keep them happy? So on the HR aspect, how we hire new people, how we engage and put put ourselves out there because we're in a market and we have to compete with other people for good candidates. That is completely being revamped. Instead of the traditional send us your CV and you go into some sort of an HR process with 400 interviews, we're having chatbots. As part of our HR offering, we're selling this to customers. So, I'd be on a web page for an IBM job posting, and then you'd get your classic little chat box to say, we've got this position open, you're interested? Oh, yeah, I can do some Java coding. We detect the Java keyword and we'll immediately send you an assessment, but not like a 5-page, 2-hour assessment where you lock yourself in a room. Just a quick little coding example. Oh yeah, he seems to know what he's doing. Let's go to the next step. On J2EE, how are you on that? Little architecture exercise, and very quickly you can assess the skill of the actual candidate and route him right through to the right person at the right time. Your whole process and engagement with the millennials has to be a lot shorter. They've got the attention span like goldfish. You lose them very quickly.
I am a millennial, by the way, just so you know. Oh, that hurt.
And she was staring off in the distance halfway through. but really, how you engage with them is absolutely critical. The other thing we're seeing a lot of is, as you say, how do you keep people happy in the workplace? Our tooling we all used to be about email, and we did a lot of effort around how do we get some value out of the email? Because at the end of the day, when you leave the company, your email box has a lot of value and it's gone. When you leave, you'd say, oh, this employee's gone, he's left a big gap, oh, we need him to upskill his replacement, and it's a big nightmare. Whereas now, all of our communications across IBM, it's not email anymore, it's instant messaging. Stuff like Slack, we've got some other internal tooling, Toscana, which we'll release shortly. But the difference with those things is it's an open channel. And when I leave and I join, I can join that Slack channel, for example, and I can see all the history of the person I replaced or the person I'm working with, and I can go back and dig through histories, and you can do some cognitive analysis and some historic analysis, etc. So you can very quickly get up to speed. So now the ability, it's kind of like the whole cloud thing where we figured out that when I'm selling software to a particular company, because I'm in this cloud mode, if I don't keep them happy, they're just going to unplug and go from Azure to Amazon W3 Web Services. It's no cost to the customer, and as the business owner, I lose that value. It's the same thing with employees. We're seeing a lot more ability for them to move horizontally. But we've also managed to smooth that out so there's not such a big loss for the company itself, because the history of the intellectual property that they created and they collaborated on while they were within the company is maintained in these now open, persistent repositories.
Do you have a happiness measurement index? How do you have KPIs where they say, Stephen, your staff are not happy enough?
We do. We used to have internally IBM, you'd get what was called the PBC. I don't know why it's called, it's the personal business commitment or something, but you'd get like a rating from 1 to 3. If you're 1, you're grand. If you're 3, and you get 2 3s, you're on your way out the door. That's completely changed now. Now it's something called checkpoint, where it's more kind of a rounded measure of the happiness within the company, and any of your pain points or issues are then worked as a sort of an action plan to develop it. So the whole approach is no longer one of measurement, it's more one of a journey to try and keep the attrition rates down, which is a good change.
Cool. So, how do you measure happiness and work on their happiness? Or is it even important?
It's hugely important, and I'm smiling at Lisa because you'd probably find our place like a science experiment. But it's really, really important. So going back to remote work, it doesn't matter if someone for us wants to work on the moon if they're good enough, and that's what makes them happy. That's absolutely fine. But we have this thing where we have a form called Feed the CEO Monkey, and our CEO is Peter, and he just basically opens up just a private Google form, and you put your suggestions in there, and they genuinely take into consideration the stuff that goes in there. So if there are grievances or whatever, they publicly address them every month, but keep the sender anonymous. In terms, we do actually rate how well we're doing. The name of the scale escapes me, but it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this to a friend? I can't think of the name.
Oh, that's the classic growth
Net
hacking.
Promoter, yeah.
Net Promoter, thank you. That's it, exactly. I couldn't think of it. So yeah, and we did that I think about 6 months ago, and our 2 founders sent out the scale, and they got back a very low rating, and it was like kicking a puppy. They were absolutely heartbroken. They didn't know. They thought they were doing everything right.
Is that you can't please everybody, or what was their analysis?
Yeah, so people were first of all frustrated with that particular scale because there was no room for manoeuvre to say why you might have selected one or why you might be a detractor or whatever. So they did it again 3 months later. They publicly addressed it within the company and took on all the feedback, and they went back then, I think was it 3 months later, and they did it again, but this time they asked why. And they found that it actually increased quite a bit. So it didn't go right up to the top, but it did increase like a lot. So it does matter an awful lot to them. They're trying more and more to give outlets for people to express themselves and, you know, say what they're annoyed with, or, you know, if something is going well, if it's not going well. So yeah, we were hugely focused on happiness. We moved into an office back in December that has slides and games rooms and all of that sort of stuff, so if people are feeling like uninspired in the middle of the day, that they can go off and slide or whatever it is. I know it sounds bonkers, but it actually works. You know, you'll hear people just take off for a while. They might have a game of Xbox or whatever it is, they're having a slump and they just need to get out of it, and they'll come back and they'll work that hour back in the evening or whatever it was. So yeah, we're very, very focused on happiness.
Cool. So Jared, your startup, so everybody's happy, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, we will have to address that in, you know, probably in a couple more years. Then we're still only 21 people, so everybody's, I think, for the most part, incredibly engaged. You know, because they're just, you know, a lot of them have been on the journey with us, and now that they're getting paid, they're happy yet still. Because for the first year, we probably weren't paying ourselves, but. I mean, the software we actually build is as I say, is workforce management. Traditionally, when someone would come into, I don't know, a Vodafone shop, they would come in the morning, they'd put their finger into a fingerprint machine, and then they'd leave the evening, put their fingerprint. And it's very, you know, we always say fingerprints are for Scotland Yard, you know, not necessarily for when every day you come in to work. So we do a lot of building software for these retailers. The one thing you would say for any retailers, cause I should say we sell primarily to retailers and to hourly paid and casual workforce rather than kind of salaried employees. The biggest challenge retailers face is, especially when the economy's on the up like it is at the moment, or when the economy's strong, they're kind of very hard to hire because they're generally like kind of $9 or €10 an hour type jobs. So they find it very hard to hire people and retain people. It's a huge challenge for these. They also often find a lot of disengagement out in the retail stores and disconnection. So one of our biggest kind of things that we would use a lot is Glassdoor. Does everyone know Glassdoor? So we look to Glassdoor a lot. When we're reaching out to retailers, we would never say what their employees are saying about them, but we would kind of have a general that this is what people in retail are saying. And the biggest things that they're saying is that they are disconnected. Is the biggest single one. There's they have no voice in the business, and then a lot of times where people are inflexible about scheduling, and like people give them kind of, you know, someone at head office has come up with some crazy scheduling optimization algorithm, and suddenly it's like makes no sense for the people on the ground. So that's what we build. We build software so when they come into work, it welcomes them back and knows where they're at. It asks them how at the end of every shift.
And do you kind of eat your own dog food and apply that to your?
We do absolutely. We turn off that engagement. No, we do. We actually do use our own software in the business, more for testing. But yeah, we do, and we survey. You can survey staff at the end of every shift, which is a really good thing. Is like, how was your day? We have a new thing we've just launched called Kudos, where you can like give kudos. Any employee can give kudos to another employee, and it's like kind of like you knocked it out of the park today. You saved my life. You know, it's kind of a private chat between those two people. So when the other person leaves, like it's like when they clock out, it's like Claire just said, you know, John, thank you very much. You made my day. You know. So we're trying to do a lot about engagement, and over the next few years, we're going to try to really, really drive. If anyone's selling software to enterprise software to business, talk engagement all day. Enterprise loves that at the moment. So we're really pushing that whole side of our business. We internally we have this big triangle in the office. It's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy. So at the bottom we have to do stuff that our old competitors always did. What time I came into work, how many vacation days I'm due. But then as we start to move up that hierarchy, it's more about taking this kind of experience will put them to work. We have a new product. It won't be this year, I don't think, but it might be the end of the year. But we've got even added our gamification where the clocking machine basically built on iPads, so it can like not only we do a lot of stuff about like great day and all this kind of nice stuff, but we're doing a lot of stuff like where the clocking machine will ask you to play a game with it at the end of the shift, like a game of tic-tac-toe, and it's like it will like beating you like 8 times in a row. So we're trying to give the clocking machine a personality of its own, so that it actually people are engaged with it. It seems a really simple thing, but it's it goes a lot further than that. It sounds a bit cheesy when I'm saying it like that, but the whole idea is trying to engage people coming in and out of work. So
yeah. Cool. So Lisa, I mean, do you kind of give the businesses you advise? Is there a roadmap for happiness? Is it different from millennials? Isn't it that people want the same things basically, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, listening to all of the three of you speaking, I can only imagine how my brain's going as a millennial, right? And go, okay. But I think the real importance that we need to get across is there's difference in opinions from every generation, but there's also good attributes from every generation. And we're really zooming in on millennials being this type of species that's quite negative in the workforce, and we seem to be adapting and all the stereotypes that we're hearing of, we all had to go through that. Why are we giving them special treatment? It's simple, because 50% of the workforce are now millennials, right? In some cases, with customers that we work with, we're seeing over 80% of the workforce being millennials. What I would say, and what I do suggest is, everyone, I think we've got owners sitting on the panel beside us, is we can't lose our culture. We can't lose why we brought these products to the front table. And I think the millennials or your employees need to understand that, because that's a very personal journey to the owner of the company. It's like myself with the team of 5, but it's very important that they understand why I did this 3 years ago. Why did our journey start? What do we want to overcome in the next few in the future? So if we start giving them everything that they want, in theory, it's not really going to work either. We have to keep a true culture of the business, which is quite key. But build on it, adapt to it, put the training programs in place that they're requiring. That's why I suppose the name Engage is beautiful, that we created 3 years ago. Fits perfectly into today's world. But we're seeing double revenue already in this first quarter than we did last year, because companies are now making the transition to become millennial friendly. We're hearing it throughout the whole session here today. So make sure that company is futuristically thinking, future-proof your business. Make sure that it's not going to scale off the charts in the next 18 months. Think cleverly, think the way millennials think the way even the future Gen Zs are actually thinking. But in the long term, absolutely, happiness is very, very key to the millennials. And unfortunately, attrition being so high as what it is in Ireland, if they get wind that they're not happy, as they exploited yesterday throughout the actual newsletters from radio and in Independent, we have 8 months with these individuals. We're not, getting them involved, getting them on the journey, keeping them happy. They will 100% stay true to the stereotype of being job hoppers. And they can, because we're in a climate crunch, unfortunately, where unemployment is at its lowest.
I mean, and even recession or non-recession, we move to more of a gig economy. We're more in a scenario where maybe no work lasts super long anyway.
Yep.
So Stephen, with things like Watson, right? You have the potential that AI can answer a lot of stuff, can do a lot of the drudge work. So potentially, I've read some studies that said, with the doctor version of Watson, potentially it can process far more data records than a human ever could. But then if you include human analysis after the crunching, the human can still, they measured it, say, 30% better value with the Watson as a tool to aid better human insights. So then, in the context of the future of work, what kind of things are you excited about in terms of a future where AI isn't instead of humans, but is offering humans the ability to maybe do potentially more interesting work? Like maybe the cars are all driven automatically, so therefore humans do more interesting things. What are your thoughts on that? What are you excited about or believe might happen?
So I think the first one that really excites me is that we're going to make what was traditionally probably a more specialized access to certain skills and disciplines, let's call it, your heart specialists, your brain surgeons, your lawyers, your insurance specialists. Whereas there's a large segment of the population that don't have access to them. They're too expensive, or you've got to go through a whole layer of lawyers or doctors or pre-diagnosis. You can't just go say to a specialist, I want a heart specialist, and go straight there. You've got to go through your GP, and your GP will do some tests, waste your time, and then eventually get there. And that's really just because of the numbers game, right? At the end of the day, they can only see so many people in a day. But what this cognitive stuff allows us to do now is it gives to the masses much more access to those people. You take the legal example. Previously, one lawyer may have been able to serve, let's say, 10 clients over the space of a month. But with the cognitive load lifted off that lawyer, where they can now triage all of their clientele and you can feed all your data into the system, same thing with, for example, a pharmacist or a doctor, they can look at your whole medical history. And when they need to process you, they don't have to sit down for an hour and study your whole case or look at your whole medical history. These systems can come through and say, this is the little dashboard for this guy. Can we just have 5 minutes of your time? And the doctor says, yes, yes, yes. Or the lawyer says, well, that's the case. We need to apply in this when we go to court. Or the pharmacist will say, well, here, yes, I agree, there's a contraindication with that drug that he's been taking for 6 months. And the decision is more informed, much more rapid. So now that same specialist, instead of only being able to treat 10 people, can treat 1,000 people, just as a matter of argument. Which means that he can now charge 1,000th of the original price that he used to charge for those 10 people and treat 1,000 people. So 1,000 people now get access to it at 1,000th of the price. These are just all artificial numbers. But I think that's the biggest deal for us, is that we're going to be able to apply these things to larger markets more rapidly and give more access to the people. The business opportunities that arise on the back end of that, only time will tell. It's really almost impossible to predict what are the new industries. When we looked at automation or even transport, when we moved from horses to motor vehicles, who knew that there'd be some guy who just cleaned diesel injectors or just did spray jobs on car bodies and stuff. There's like a myriad of industries that are going to have to support these new monsters that are coming up and changing the way the world works. You look at Uber and the ability to sort of displace the taxi industry in a very heavy way. There's huge disruption across the industry. But I think it's more a question of looking at the opportunities rather than looking at the buggy whip makers that are now going to be disenfranchised for whatever reason.
Yeah. Thanks. So what are you excited about? Because, say, Barry, I started this morning talking about the scale of 0 to 1 of jobs most likely to be automated. So in teamwork, if some aspects of what you do gets automated, what opportunities does that give you to do for other stuff?
So in terms automated, like for us in terms of
what the future might look like. What might the future look like if?
I just hope everyone buys project management software. What can I say? No, I think definitely yes. Automating, like you're never going to completely eradicate, say, the likes of email, which kind of originally when we started, I thought that was kind of where we were.
Do you use Slack or?
We don't use Slack, but purely because we have our own product.
Oh, you have a version?
Yeah,
okay.
A version, yes, of Slack. So yeah, for us, what's exciting for us is that we're just going to open up our API and work with all the likes of Slack and all these amazing companies that are producing stuff and just integrate. So you kind of have this monster tool that can do everything. That's the plan.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Jared. So, as well as you're in the now, but what might